Jacob continued on his journey and eventually reached the land of the people of the East. He saw a well in the field with 3 flocks of sheep lying nearby because the flocks were watered from that well. There was a large stone covering the well's mouth, and it was only removed when all the flocks were gathered. Jacob asked the shepherds,
"My brothers, where are you from?"
They replied,
"We are from Haran."
He asked,
"Do you know Laban, the grandson of Nahor?"
"Yes, we know him."
They answered. Then Jacob asked,
"Is he well?"
"Yes, he is."
They said.
"And here comes his daughter, Rachel, with the sheep."
When Jacob saw Rachel, he went to the well, rolled the stone away by himself, and watered her sheep. Then he kissed Rachel and wept out of joy. He told her that he was her father's relative, Rebekah's son. Rachel ran to tell her father. When Laban heard about Jacob, he ran to meet him, embraced him, kissed him, and brought him to his home. Jacob stayed with Laban's family and helped with the work. After a month, Laban said to Jacob,
"You shouldn't work for me for nothing just because you are my relative. Tell me, what should your wages be?"
Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older was Leah, who had gentle eyes, and the younger was Rachel, who was beautiful and full of life. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said,
"I will work for you for 7 years in exchange for your daughter Rachel."
Laban agreed, saying,
"It's better to give her to you than to someone else. Stay and work for me."
So Jacob worked 7 years to marry Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. When the time was completed, Jacob said to Laban,
"Give me my wife so that I may marry her."
Laban prepared a wedding feast and invited everyone. But that evening Laban took his older daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob instead. Jacob slept with her, not realizing it was Leah. The next morning, when Jacob discovered the deception, he went to Laban and said,
"Why have you deceived me? I worked 7 years for Rachel."
Laban replied,
"In our country, it's not customary to marry off the younger daughter before the older one. Complete this bridal week with Leah, and then I'll give you Rachel as well if you agree to work for me another 7 years.
Jacob agreed. He finished the bridal week with Leah, and then Laban gave him Rachel as his wife too. Laban also gave each daughter a maidservant, Zilpah to Leah and Bilhah to Rachel. Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah and worked for Laban another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved as much, he enabled her to have children, while Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son named Reuben, saying,
"The Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now."
She had another son and named him Simeon, saying,
"The Lord heard that I am not loved, so he gave me this son."
She had a third son named Levi, saying,
Now at last my husband will become attached to me because I have given him 3 sons.
Then she had a fourth son and named him Judah. After that, she stopped having children for a while. When Rachel saw that she could not have children, she became jealous of her sister Leah. She said to Jacob,
"Give me children, or I will die."
Jacob became angry and replied,
"Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?"
Rachel said,
"Here is my servant Bilhah. Sleep with her so that she can have children for me. And through her, I too can build a family."
So Rachel gave Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, and Bilhah bore Jacob a son. Rachel named him Dan, saying,
God has vindicated me and heard my cry.
Bilhah had a second son, and Rachel named him Naphtali, saying,
I have wrestled with my sister and won.
When Leah saw that she was no longer having children, she gave her servant Zilpah to Jacob as a wife. Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah named him Gad, saying,
How fortunate.
Zilpah bore another son, and Leah named him Asher, saying,
How happy I am. The women will call me happy.
During the wheat harvest, Reuben found some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah,
Please give me some of your son's mandrakes.
Leah replied,
Wasn't it enough that you took my husband? Now you want my son's mandrakes too?
Rachel said,
Very well. Jacob can sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes.
So when Jacob came in from the field that evening, Leah went out to meet him and said,
You must sleep with me tonight. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes.
So he stayed with her, and God listened to Leah. She became pregnant and gave birth to a fifth son, naming him Issachar, saying,
God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband.
Leah had a sixth son, and named him Zebulun. Later, Leah gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She gave birth to a son and said,
God has taken away my disgrace.
She named him Joseph, saying,
May the Lord add to me another son.
After Joseph was born, Jacob said to Laban,
Send me on my way so I can go back to my homeland. Give me my wives and children, whom I have worked for, and let me go.
Laban said,
If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will pay them.
Jacob replied,
Don't give me anything. Let me keep the spotted and speckled sheep and goats as my wages. That will be my payment.
In this way, Jacob became exceedingly prosperous, with large flocks, servants, camels, and donkeys. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were complaining, saying,
Jacob has taken everything our father owned and gained all his wealth from what belonged to him.
Jacob also noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not as friendly as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob,
Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you.
Jacob called Rachel and Leah to the field where his flocks were, and said to them,
I see that your father's attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know how I have worked hard for your father, but he has cheated me, changing my wages 10 times. However, God did not let him harm me. When he said, The speckled animals will be your wages, all the flock gave birth to speckled young. When he said, The striped ones will be your wages, all the flock gave birth to striped young. God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me.
Rachel and Leah answered,
We no longer have any share in our father's inheritance. He treats us as foreigners and has spent all that was supposed to be ours. So, do whatever God has told you to do.
So Jacob put his children and wives on camels and took all his livestock and possessions he had acquired in Paddan Aram. Without telling Laban, he set out to return to his father Isaac in Canaan. Meanwhile, Rachel secretly took her father's household gods. When Laban found out that Jacob had fled, he pursued him for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. When Laban caught up with Jacob, he said,
Why did you deceive me and carry off my daughters like captives? Why didn't you let me say goodbye to my family? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and daughters. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night God warned me to be careful with you. But why did you steal my gods?
Jacob answered,
I left secretly because I was afraid you would take your daughters by force. But if anyone has your gods, they shall not live. Search for them and take them if you find them.
Laban searched Jacob's tents, but when he reached Rachel's tent, she had hidden the idols in her camel's saddle and was sitting on it. She said to her father,
Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up. I am having my monthly period.
So Laban could not find his idols. Then Jacob was angry and challenged Laban.
What is my crime that you have pursued me like this? You searched through all my goods. Have you found anything that belongs to you? These 20 years I have worked for you, 14 years for your daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If God had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and rebuked you.
Laban answered,
These women are my daughters, these children are my children, and these flocks are my flocks. Yet what can I do today about my daughters or their children?
So Laban and Jacob made a covenant. They set up a stone pillar, and Jacob's family and Laban's family gathered stones into a heap, calling it a witness between them. They agreed not to harm each other. Laban said,
May the Lord keep watch between us when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters or take other wives, remember that God is a witness.
Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and he offered a sacrifice there in the hill country. They shared a meal together, and early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and daughters goodbye and returned home. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them,
This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have cattle, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. I am sending this message to you, my lord, that I may find favor in your eyes.
When the messengers returned, they said,
We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you with 400 men.
Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him, along with the flocks, herds, and camels, into 2 groups. He thought,
If Esau attacks one group, the other group may escape.
Then Jacob prayed,
O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me and the mothers with their children.
Jacob spent the night there and selected gifts for Esau from his herds. He put each herd in the care of his servants and sent them ahead, spacing them out. That night, Jacob sent his family and all his possessions across the stream, but he stayed behind alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw he could not overpower Jacob, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that it was wrenched as they wrestled. The man said,
Let me go, for it is daybreak.
But Jacob replied,
I will not let you go unless you bless me.
The man asked,
What is your name?
Jacob,
he answered. Then the man said,
Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome.
Jacob called the place Peniel, saying,
It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared.
The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. That is why the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the hip socket, because Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming with 400 men. He divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. Jacob went ahead of them and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. And they both wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children and asked,
Who are these with you?
Jacob replied,
They are the children God has graciously given your servant.
Then the maidservants and their children came forward and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down, and last of all, Joseph and Rachel came and bowed down. Esau asked,
What do you mean by all these droves I met?
To find favor in your eyes, my lord.
Jacob answered. But Esau said,
I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself.
Jacob insisted,
No, please. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me and I have all I need.
And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted. Then Esau said,
Let us be on our way. I will accompany you.
But Jacob replied,
My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard, even one day, all the animals will die. So please go on ahead of your servant. I will move along slowly at the pace of the livestock and the children until I come to my lord in Seir.
Esau said,
Then let me leave some of my men with you.
But Jacob replied,
Why do that? Just let me find favor in the eyes of my lord.
So that day Esau started back to Seir, while Jacob went to Succoth. There he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock.